At AIA Australia, we're making healthy living easier by incentivising your clients with rewards, like discounts on their gym memberships, eligible flights, and insurance premiums with AIA Vitality. It's no wonder that we've reduced client lapse rates by 50% and helped grow client engagement. To find out more, contact your AIA CDM today.
Streaming in. I currently can't see any viewers, but I'm sure there'll be some. We've got plenty of people registered for today. We're super excited. Just before we get into anything, Ray J, how'd you find XY Social?
I loved it, mate. My favourite part, I reckon we had pretty good hosts. Pretty good panel, but my favourite was probably the host.
Definitely the guy who was organising the questions and asking the hard-hitting questions of your boss. He was definitely the best.
Yeah, I find myself getting the mail and dropping it off now, so I don't know if that's related or I don't know if there's correlation, causation, that sort of thing, but there's definitely...
That's right. You're now doing the coffee runs.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, let's get straight into it. We've got an action-packed XY Live today. So today, I just want to first off mention that everyone, if you're not already in the Facebook group, you need to join the XY Advisor Facebook group. There's conversations going on every single day. And I was actually talking to someone the other day about it, and it's probably the only place that I know of within the advice industry where it isn't kind of tainted by product providers, trying to give their spiel, or by, dealer groups kind of pushing their kind of agendas. It's the only place where you can go as advisors, for advisors, just ask questions. So make sure you join the Facebook group. I think we've posted the link to join the Facebook group in the chat box. So make sure you open up the chat box today. We have Sharon McClafferty, and I hope I've said that right. Nailed it. Good. She's from Slipstream Coaching, and Sharon attended the Simon Sinek conference early last month. It's $1,200 per head. So we are bringing kind of the learnings from that conference to you guys, and we're just going to talk about how, from Simon Sinek's talks, how we implement that in advice businesses. So Sharon, just tell us a bit about yourself and what Slipstream Coaching do.
So Slipstream Coaching coach accounting and financial planning firms, specifically ambitious firms. So in order to work with us, you need to want more than you currently have. And that could be financially, it could be lifestyle, whatever. So we work with some high performance firms all around Australia. And we do anything from just initial 3-year business plan, operational plan, to ongoing coaching. So an average firm might work with us for 3 years, probably maybe 4. So we don't believe coaching is forever. So you have different coaches for different stages of your business. So that's sort of what we do. So with the Simon Sinek stuff, we've actually been implementing that in firms for 6 years. So we took a bunch of our sort of top performing firms to go see him and get $1,200 for 3 hours. So he's a bit of a rock star.
Yeah. So just if for anyone out there who's never heard of Simon Sinek, can you just give us a rough idea of who he is, why people are paying $1,200 for 3 hours?
Why?
That was for non-VIP, by the way. VIPs. Okay, so Simon Sinek shot to fame through a TED Talk that he did in 2009. It's the 3rd most watched TED Talk of all time. So he's got 31 million viewers on that talk alone. So in 2009, he wrote a book called Start With Why, and then did that sort of 18-minute TED Talk. If you don't know what a TED Talk is, then that's going to be your biggest takeaway from this webinar. So nothing else will be as important as that. Go Google TED Talk and live there for a couple of days. So he's shot to fame, not with the video and not with the book, but with the concept of Start With Why. So it's called the golden circle. So you've got a bullseye, why is in the middle, followed by how, and around the outside is what. And he argued that most companies and most leaders communicate from outside in. So they tell you what they do, they tell you how, and they may tell you why. But exceptional companies and exceptional leaders communicate from the inside out. So they start with why. And some of the examples he gives are Apple, Martin Luther King, the Wright brothers. And so when you deconstruct their messaging and why they do what they do, that's what drives them. So it's that concept that's made him quite famous. So he's now launched a new book called Leaders Eat Last, which is really around leadership and I guess being the leader you wish that you had. And so there are some game-changing pieces of advice in that book for particularly medium to large businesses, so probably not as applicable to this audience. But he consults to Disney, the US military, Pfizer, Microsoft. So he in management circles, he's a big name.
Yeah, cool. So, given that I'm not the CEO of Disney, I'm not running a massive company like that, what are the main takeaways from the session that you went to that we as advisors, small business owners or medium business owners can implement in our business?
Yeah, so before I sort of launch into takeaways, it's probably to give a bit of a disclaimer up front, and he actually gave this disclaimer. He is an optimist. So he is an out-and-out optimist, and I actually worked out sort of throughout the event, he's like the Seinfeld, but to business. So he pulls out concepts that seem really complex, and he can make them really simple. And he makes observations that everyone goes, oh yeah. So he's like, comes out with all these, it's quite like Seinfeld, but for business. So probably three of the takeaways. The first one would be, if anyone's studied sort of Jim Collins stuff, you would know the concept of, or you will have heard of it anyway, getting the right people on the bus. So have we got the right people on our bus? And that can be true for, a team of two. So are we the right team of two? And he argued it's not about the people, it's about the bus. So stop blaming all of your problems on your people and start working on your culture and the circle of safety and the security that you can provide those people, because people can't thrive and fulfill their potential if they're worried that if they don't hit next month's target, you're going to fire them. So if they're worried about that, then they're never going to take a bullet for you. Not that that's like quite literally the goal, but it was a good concept to leave going, well, if you find yourself constantly saying, oh, it's the wrong people, you need to do some more work on your bus. And that comes back to, what are our values, how are we articulating those, and, being honest with yourself. So one of the audience put up their hand and said, oh, but what about if you've got an idiot on your team? And he said, well, take accountability for hiring a really good person in the wrong job. So personally take accountability, because that person might excel elsewhere, but you've hired them in the wrong. So that was a good concept to come out with. So very much in leaders' face, like be a leader and take ownership of that stuff and stop blaming your people. The other thing that he spoke about was the biology of metrics, which I think is for financial planning firms particularly is good to know. So it's good to know that we probably are all dopamine junkies. So that's the chemical that's released when we hit a target or achieve an accomplishment. It's that chemical is why sometimes you do a task and then you write it on your task list just so you can cross it out. Yeah, so that's dopamine. So by crossing it out, you get your little hit. So dopamine's a valuable thing to know about, because it means that it's why people say you must set goals, you must have metrics, but it's also it's really a simple thing. So it doesn't work when you have complex ideas. You can't say, I'll give you a bonus when you achieve more. So you're never going to get your dopamine hit. I will give you a bonus when you hit revenue of $33,000. Simple, clarity, and you're going to get that dopamine hit. However, loads of businesses, and probably a lot on the line, rely too heavily on dopamine. So that's a real individual instinct. So we will go for, as cave people, we will go for our hit of dopamine at the expense of others. So if you have a whole business running on this individual targets, then you'll never sort of hit your peak of efficiency. So you need to also understand serotonin, which is the social chemical. It sort of drives us to seek the recognition of others. So this is where you, like, some of your clients, actually, this would be a good one to understand. Like, they're not building their wealth for themselves. They're building their wealth for their kids or their parents who are getting elderly. So they're doing it for someone else. And it's great in a business to include that as well. So a lot of the firms we work with, there might be some individual metrics, but the metric that we measure the business by is always a team metric. We want everyone incentivized. So some of our firms, if they hit this team metric, they might get an extra week's annual leave. Like, it's a big deal. So how hard is that team working together to get the week's annual leave? So it builds sort of cohesion. It's like it's the leadership chemical. So I would encourage you guys to do a bit more reading about dopamine and serotonin, because they not only affect your businesses, they affect how your clients are motivated as well. And to understand the chemicals that are happening was pretty cool. And the third thing was the why. So know it, articulate it, tell the world. And so he spoke a bit more about if you're struggling with it, how to find it, and how to get it, sort of how to build your cult. I don't think he used the word cult, but to tell the world, this is our why. Yeah. And you'll find people who are attracted to that story. So, I mean, there was literally a lady in the audience and her business was chocolate bouquets. So instead of sending flowers, you send chocolates, but in sort of a bouquet. She had like 1,500 people in tears with her why. Like, there's no reason, but her why was around breast cancer. And that was actually why she started the business. That was what drove her every day. So if you can find that, it can be really powerful. That's probably the takeaways. I mean, there was loads of others, but they're the three that I think you can do a bit more research on.
Yeah. So those who are watching, make sure you throw out questions. If you've got any questions about the subject, we'll get to them at the end. But I guess my question is, it is hard to do this stuff as a business owner. You're running a small business. It's really hard. So how much time do you think we should dedicate to as a business owner, thinking about your why, thinking about how do we motivate staff? So how much time should we invest into it?
So the why is a once-off event. If you crack that code, it doesn't really change. Your business will change and evolve. You could even change what you're offering and your why may remain the same. So that is a one-off investment of time, and I would encourage you to do it along with a business planning process. So yes, that's going to take, so we run a business planning workshop, it takes 2 days, and so it's 2 days of your life, but the evidence around having a documented business plan is profit per partner is like 200% or something crazy. So, time is never going to be a good excuse to not do that. So why and values are a once-off. The metrics, so the firms we work with might change their metrics every quarter. So setting new metrics, getting the team fired up. The biggest mistake you can make is not having them at all. Like, you guys know that, so clients without goals are going to hit them with deadly accuracy, right? So put that into your business. Your business needs goals and metrics, I would say quarterly. So 2 hours in the last week of the quarter to redefine what the metrics are going to be for the quarter ahead. So some of our firms are doing revenue, some of them are doing referrals, some of them are doing leads. So it could be a different metric every quarter, but this is not a massive investment of time.
Do you like the idea of the quarterly metrics as well? I think it's a bit remiss of management theory to do things on an annual basis, and I'm kind of keen to hear your view on this. I think it just affords for too much recency bias. I think everybody can create a brilliant May, June, part of their financial year in the lead up to their review for July, and suddenly what you did November last year is pretty easily forgotten. Is there any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I think some of the reason why quarterly targets, and now I'm giving away some secret sauce here, but some of the reason why quarterly targets work is because it takes one deadline, so an annual deadline, and creates 4 deadlines in the year. So how fast do you work in lead up to a deadline, right? So the more, to an extent, the more deadlines, the better. So yes, our firms hustle so that they turn up at their quarterly meeting with some good results. Now, if that was annual, yeah, you might hustle for a couple of months at the end of the year. So it's pretty simple, but having, they're not real. They're just deadlines that you say that they are. They're not real deadlines, but you say, I'm going to hit this target by this date. So yeah, I much prefer quarterly. So we track our firms monthly, but then the targets are all quarterly basis.
Yeah, I think I quite like that. In financial planning, I know one of the things we kind of do, we use the analogy that your financial plan is like the route that a ship would take, but the ship's never really on the route. It's forever making adjustments back to that route. And if you only make that adjustment annually rather than monthly or quarterly, then those shifts feel to be much more. They're much more. They're not as nice or as pleasant, or on a smaller scale, they're quite considerable.
And 90 days is a good time frame for implementing projects. So if you said, well, I'm going to launch a new website, a month is too short, but in 90 days you can do that. So if you gave yourself a year, it would take a year.
Yeah. Have you? It's interesting. Sort of studying some of this at university at the moment, where there seems to be a real shift in management theory around moving away from money being the sole motivator or the sole, I guess, cherry that employers are putting in front of their staff, because the theory seems to suggest that intrinsic motivators are much more powerful than trying to motivate your staff. So things like that annual leave, extra week of annual leave, and those sorts of things. As soon as you said that, I thought, geez, that's pretty awesome.
People hustle for that.
Yeah. Have you sort of seen how powerful that is, or have you sort of got to a point where you're putting metrics or a quantitative multiple on that sort of intrinsic motivator?
Yeah. So I mean, we work with a lot of firms, and so I guess in some ways we get to reduce trial and error. So the firms who have it has to be in line with the culture and the team, but the firms who have financial bonuses usually don't perform as well. So you could have a time off bonus, like if you've got team members and they've got families, what you're actually doing is giving a bonus to the entire family. Like you get dad or mum home during school holidays for an extra few days. So our firms for the last quarter, a lot of them gave an extra 2 days around Easter, so which takes a 4-day weekend into a 6-day, and that's actually significant. And those teams, they hustled to get their extra 2 days. The other one people have done, they've done trips. So if you've got a young team, then you get a bonus 2 ways, because you get the bonus, the trip away, and you get the culture moment. So we've had groups take their people, skiing in New Zealand. We've had one firm this was an annual target, but they took their team to Vegas. You put that stretch target where suddenly tickets to Vegas, you go, well, stuff it. If I grow revenue at 38%, on a certain base, I'm buying my team tickets to Vegas. So, and the thing is, they tell all of their friends, like that becomes this conversation outside their working life. So if you can infiltrate outside someone's working life, which you can't do with money, then you've got it. So if they're telling their friends, my boss is taking me skiing, or my boss is taking me to Bali, if we hit this target, you have nailed it.
Gets a bit easier to get into the office a little earlier on that cold, rainy Monday morning in August.
Yeah, I'm going to Bali.
Yeah. That makes
I'd love to hear from people watching. If you can just put in the comment section below if you've got KPIs within your business, and what type of KPIs. Are they the financial KPIs, or are they more that intrinsic KPIs? So that'd be good, just a quick straw poll from people watching. Because just following up from that, what are you finding as a good takeaway for people watching? What are you finding as a solid base for KPIs? It's a mixture, and how, within your business, working with advice businesses, how are you finding that kind of KPI structure working really well?
Yeah, so it's generally a mix. So when we meet firms, sometimes they're quite anti-tracking financial KPIs, but their numbers usually are poorer for it. So I get the whole, let's not track, only financial KPIs, but let's make sure we track them. So other things that people are tracking are, conversions and leads, and client referrals, client testimonials, Google reviews. So there's a whole, you don't want to make it too complex, but you can actually change these numbers every quarter. So this quarter we're tracking, these 3 things are going to be really important. Next quarter it could be a completely different 3 things. So it's like that ship, I guess, Ray J, like, where's our ship need to go? Okay, we need to go back to leads. Okay, we need to go to efficiency. We track turnaround time on SOAs. So there's 40 different things that our financial planning firms are tracking, and they change them often. But we would like one of them to be a financial one.
Yeah, and are you within your coaching services? Are you putting that onto your advice businesses to come up with their own? Or are you saying, hey, this month I reckon you should be, or this quarter you should be tracking this. This quarter you should be looking at this now.
So in the first instance, they all come up with their own, because that's really important. So to own a KPI, it's a lot easier if you've come up with it, and that actually extends to their team. So if you're putting KPIs on team members, you need to ask them, okay, well, I'm tracking this. What do you think it should be? Because if you just say, I think you should be, your efficiency should be this, or this should take you this long, then they don't own that. But if they say, I will bring in 50K of new business this quarter, they will own that. So it's way more powerful. That said, with firms we're working with, we do sometimes say, recommend, let's change that one. So, we've got, firms who say one of their KPIs is refreshing their reception. And I say, well, bloody go do that yourself, but we're not tracking that.
And for those watching as a takeaway, I'll just sort of further that, Sharon. I can't stress how much the academia supports the idea that you need to create accountability for your staff and ownership as well. So if the KPI is a financial metric one, that's okay, but almost if the team can build that and create it and take ownership for it, then when you're doing your reporting to that target, it's theirs. And they talk about the idea that one of the things, especially younger employees, and we're a younger crowd and we probably all get it, one of the things that I really enjoy about a role is having autonomy and ownership in a job, rather than having my runway set for me and I'm running somebody else's game. Because you take sort of pride in that. Was any of the session kind of talking to that, and how younger employees, or I guess younger generations are sort of looking at these things a little bit differently? Because I think older generations perhaps we're company men. You'd sort of finish your internship after university and you retire with the same institution and a golden watch.
Yeah. So his latest video, I guess, to be a sensation was quite recently, and it was about millennials in the workplace. And it was really, I watched it and changed some of my behaviour that day, and I had some apologies to give out in my life. So one to my husband, because I've been living through my phone and he's constantly like, get off Twitter. So I watched that clip and just went, wow. So it was absolutely about how different the next generations are in terms of workers, and how they will demand autonomy and flexibility. And if you can't cope with the idea of flexibility or someone logging in from home, then you're going to need to pack up your shop. So he's basically said they are coming out of school and university with less social skills than they will need in the workplace. So, a lot of people have been living through their iPhones for a long time now. So that is a really good clip to go and visit as well. So, we're going to need to change some things and give people the autonomy to both succeed and fail.
Yeah, and do you think that extends when it does come to those KPIs or those targets, is having the team or the staff be involved in articulating exactly what that is? So if you have a review and you miss it, it's like, well, I didn't set the goalpost and you missed. It's like we collectively failed. So let's work out why.
Yeah, correct. So with most of our firms who are larger and have sort of anywhere between 6 and 12 team members, they actually have one-on-ones every quarter saying, I think I think these are the 3 areas that we want to track, and what do you think those numbers should be? And so the team member comes up with it. And if they go low, so if they go, well, I think I'm only going to bring in this quarter, that's an opportunity for a discussion. Well, why do you think that is? Or where is your confidence lacking in that area? Or how can we help you? So you have that conversation up front, not at the end.
Yeah.
And it totally changes the outcome.
I suppose that also talks to the other theory, and sorry to keep coming back to the academics behind it, but there's something known as in management theory, root cause analysis. So you're not sort of facing the problem that you see in front of you. You understand what's happening behind that. So if you've got a member, or if you create a target that's probably lower than what's fair or realistic, rather than shooting at that as the problem, understand where that's come from, because there's an environment or a context which is suggested that person thinks that's reasonable. So don't shoot the person, understand what's behind the scenes.
Yeah, so to link that back to some Simon Sinek content, so where he said, like his book on Leaders Eat Last, he talks about this creating a circle of safety. And the circle of safety means that someone in your team should be able to walk into your office and say, I'm feeling completely inadequate. I don't feel like I'm up to the task that you've set me, or I've failed. So this circle of safety where they can say, I've failed, or I'm not feeling confident, you need to create that, and they need to have no fear that they are going to be negatively affected in their job or career from being really honest. And so if you can create that circle of safety, it will pay off massively.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, that's really difficult to kind of build that environment. Like, I know for myself with staff, it is hard. I often try and build that and talk about that, but I had a staff member leave May last year, and just as you were talking, I was very open with her, and I was very much about saying, come and talk to me about anything, but it didn't necessarily translate. And so, thinking back, how do I change certain behaviours that I did? Because when she was leaving, I did kind of an exit interview, and I said, look, I'm not going to be your boss in a week's time. Be as brutal as you can be, because I'm not going to learn anything if you don't, kind of help me become better. And there wasn't anything, necessary that was pinpointed. Maybe I just needed to be a bit better about how I managed that interview. But I felt like I created that environment. But thinking back, I kind of think, some of the feedback was, being in a small business was really hard because I'm pinging around all around the place, changing my mind, and that was difficult. So, what are some real takeaway tips that managers or employers can implement in their business to have that kind of that circle of safety?
Yeah, so here's the phrase which I really like. There is nothing that you can break that I can't fix.
Yeah,
So I support you to make decisions in line with the values of this business, to say that you have to have values. But yeah, there's nothing you can break that I can't fix, or like the idea of I've got your back. So if you're a manager and not an owner, if push comes to shove, I am in your corner. So if you've acted in the best interest of the business, the best interest of the client, if you can hand on heart say, I did this for, non-malicious reasons, I will go into bat for you every single time. So it's that culture that you're trying to get across. But that said, absolutely, there are people who are never going to thrive in a small growing business where you're constantly pivoting, but there are people who love that. So it can be that you found a great person, but you're not the size that they needed.
And what about if you are sort of that one-man band, or you're kind of just starting out and you're creating these metrics for yourself, but at the end of the day, you've kind of just taken on a lease and you've got a new computer and you haven't got a business yet. How do you sort of frame things, I guess, in a helpful way that is probably not disheartening, I guess, if you're not quite reaching them, but also keeping yourself honest? How do you sort of create those targets for yourself?
Yeah, so I had a really interesting chat with a firm recently who set this massive stretch target, and it was their first quarter working with us, and they've gone, you know, there is no quarter more important than the first quarter. I can't believe we're not going to hit this. I'm angry that we're not going to hit this first target. So it was a massive stretch revenue target, and they hit 90%. Biggest quarter they've ever had. But to them, it was a failure. I was like, this is not a win or lose game. You have achieved so much more just by setting that target and going after it with gusto. So I guess to cut yourself some serious slack. So it's not about win or lose. So there is this massive gradient. Yes, I mean, we've had firms today where we've sort of red penned them because they haven't hit the target, but geez, they've come close, and that is also to be celebrated. So I guess the takeaway is just like your beautiful board behind you, use visual management. Use visual management to set your targets and look at them every day. And you may or may not hit them, but you'll do better than you would without them.
Yeah. So just to kind of move away from the KPIs and management, you said that, you know, developing your why is a once-off thing, and I love hearing that I only have to do something once because I'm all over that. What are your recommendations for people, you know, struggling to articulate your why? Because I know that is the center of what Simon Sinek talks about. So, what are some tips? Give us some recommendations of how to develop that.
So the reason why like many people, so you are not alone if you're struggling. If you've watched the clip and you go, God, I don't know what my why is, you are not alone. So one of the major reasons for that is that the part of the brain that is control of emotions has no capacity for language. So you might in your gut, you know your why, but you actually can't formulate that into words. So don't beat yourself up. That's totally normal and probably a good thing if you think in your gut you have a why. So we actually help. So we've got a couple of worksheets that that firms go through and sort of answer a whole bunch of questions. So for anyone listening, I'm happy to send those through. So if you email me at sharon@slipstreamcoaching.com.au, I'll flick you those worksheets because they help. So they're going to ask questions like, what are the top services that you're providing? What are the results for the clients if they take up that service? And how do those results impact their lives? So by asking a series of questions, you kind of go, oh, there's a theme there. So maybe a good way to think about it. So we work with a financial planning firm, so planner and 2 team members, so not a big business. And when he started working with us, he had a very single metric. I want to double my average spend per client and halve my client base. So one of the first things we did with him was business planning because, okay, well, that's a great idea, but how are we going to do that in practice? And so his business was already, we found out, a bit different. So his average spend per client at the start was $12,000. It's not bad for a planning firm. So his why, when we sort of articulate, well, who are you working with? Who do you like working with? Why did you start the business? I actually wrote it down. So I'll read it out because it sort of shows you that every planning firm is going to have a different why. So his is partnering with you to live an extraordinary life. We enjoy working with interesting people with ambition. So the type of people he is attracting to his business is totally different because they've now articulated that why and they market that why. So we work with exceptional people who are ambitious. So their average spend has gone from 12K to 20K in 18 months. So it's a one-off event, and if you get it right, it could change, like it could really change your business. You could turn up to work going, yep, I'm more excited to work with this niche or to help people in this situation or to deliver this service because you've nailed that why.
Do you have an opinion as to when you go through that process? And the reason I ask, I went through a grad program and they did a lot of this stuff, which was wonderful, talking about ideal clients and why I would enjoy working with them. But the simple reality was I was probably a bit too green to understand and I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was kind of caught in the mix of wanting to do a brilliant business plan and understand what I was building. But to say why, I would be guessing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, in an ideal world, it's early, but the thing about the why, it's your business why and your personal why should be pretty aligned.
Yeah.
So my personal why hasn't actually changed when I've changed jobs. So I was working for another coaching business who stopped coaching and launched a technology product, and they wanted me to stay on in this technology product. And I said, you know what? That technology product is not going to change anyone's life. And I realized, like, the why I turn up to business because I don't want to have like a incremental impact on someone's life. I want to change people's lives. So that is my personal why. It's also our business why. So it kind of doesn't matter how green you are. It could be why financial planning?
Yeah, I was just thinking that perhaps why are you looking at this as a career, and then understand that, and then from that you've got to put context to work out who would fit with that.
Yeah, but the ideal client one, I agree, you will actually get better at that the more clients you work with. So ideal client is sometimes you work out you actually really like this type of client. So work with another firm who he says, oh no, I don't have a niche. Just happens to be that 30% of his financial planning clients are IT professionals.
Yeah, he's got a niche.
Yeah. So I said, okay, do you like working with that? Oh yeah, I really like working with those guys. They earn good money. They've got interesting jobs. I get what they do. Like I like that stuff. I go to their conferences. It's like, okay. So he wouldn't have known that. So I think the ideal client does evolve, and that's something you can revisit every 2 to 3 years.
Do you see there's a difference between, or do you like themes, I guess, because I know you work with advisors and accountants, but you know, I think for us as advisors, we tend to see it as a bit of a fence between the industries, different approaches. You know, the industries can generally attract different people. Do you find, and I ask because I know a lot of advisors are looking to work with accountants and try and understand, you know, their way of thinking and the like. Do you sort of see, you know, many differences between the industries, or is it just something we've built up in our heads?
Oh no, it's legit. Like, yeah, you're totally different people.
Yeah.
Which is why people think we're crazy that we put you all in the same room. So my business partner, Scott Charlton, has written 2 books on this subject, one for accountants to understand planners and one for planners to understand accountants. So it is a different language, different people, but you've got a hell of a lot to offer clients. So we kind of go, we don't care how different you are, or we actually don't even care if you've had a bad experience with each other, because it's in the best interest of your clients to work together. So yeah, we're a bit tough love on that. Get over yourselves. Your clients need you to work together. So yes, no, it's not in your head. It's real. Yeah.
Well, I imagine that it makes for some pretty interesting why conversations if you've got a bit of yin and yang happening.
Yeah. So back to the guy who articulated his niche being IT professionals. I said to him, why do I not find this on your website? Like, why are you not marketing or writing blogs for IT professionals? And he said, oh, well, if I come out and say that that's my niche, then accounting firms won't refer other work to me. And I said, are accounting firms referring work to you now? He says, no. So I was like, well, what have you got to lose? And so then he did. And at the time, there was a firm in the room that he wanted to work with. And so he said, oh, well, I do work with IT professionals earning over 250, and I've been doing that for a long time, really good at it. And the firm he wanted to work with and has been trying to get a referral out of for 3 years, one of the partners goes, oh, we've got a couple of those guys on our books. I should send them to you. Mm. So just own it. Like if you have a niche, or if you have something you want to do, you will get more reward from owning it than hiding it. So to not say something because I want general referrals, he wasn't getting any anyway.
Yeah.
So we're quickly running out of time, but I'm like totally enthralled with this conversation. But do have one last question just about the why. So you did say your personal why should kind of marry with your business why. What happens if, you know, when I talk to lots of people and hear lots of people, it's all very much, I am the most selfless person in the world. I'm doing this to help better humanity. What happens if your why is a bit more selfish? My why, let's say, is to be the best dad I can be. So how does that marry with my business why? And how, because lots of whys are very selfless focused, how do you marry those two together?
So I would argue that why is incredibly selfless. So your kids are external to you, even though it might feel like they're not sometimes. So how that marries to your business why is that you might find yourself predominantly helping families, because you know deep down how strong that drive is to provide for families and to protect families. So you might find that why sort of infiltrates who you start working with and who you can speak really passionately to. So they might marry, and I don't think that is selfless at all. So I don't think that is selfish at all. So I have met people who go, I just want to make a ton of money, and so they and a few of them, I actually do believe that. So some people are really low on the empathy scale. And it is a pretty selfish why, and they really struggle with this stuff. But if your why or it is truly selfish, then it's going to be really hard to attract people to you. So that's attracting team members, attracting clients, and because you're never going to be able to be authentic. You can't say to someone, listen, the reason I'm in business is because I want to join the 3 Comma Club and have $100 million in revenue, right? So people, you're not going to attract team so it's the selfish ones may never reach their potential.
I mean that's kind of one of my it's been a question is like, well, if I just want to make a bucket load of cash, I'm not going to communicate that to my clients, potential clients, because they're just going to look at me and go, well, you're going to try and rip me off. So,
and there are people who do that really successfully. So there's a whole bunch of those, real estate spruikers that we all know of, and I'll teach you the share market kind of spruikers. And, they all get found out, and you Google them and it's, quite negative. So, I mean, those people exist and they might be successful on one metric, but if that's, that's probably not our audience and that's not who we want to be.
I suppose everyone's climbing their own Maslow's hierarchy, and some are still working out how to eat, I guess. Yeah,
that's right. So, I mean, thank you very much, Sharon. This has been a fantastic conversation, and we will move it into the Facebook group. So, Sharon, if you're not already in there, we're going to give you a link to join because we need you in there to kind of further discuss, all this Simon Sinek stuff. And talking about TED Talks, actually, I forgot to mention this. My favorite TED Talk is from Dan Pallotta. I think that's how you say his name. It's The Way We Think About Charity is Dead Wrong. Watch that. If you've got anything to do with non-profits or charities, it's an amazing talk. So my top 3 takeaways was we only need to do the why, in depth once. Love it. Don't need to revisit it if I've nailed it. The second thing was the KPI shouldn't just be financial metrics. And the last thing that both me and Ray J, we've been messaging each other that this was a great quote is as managers or leaders, telling and making sure your staff are comfortable knowing that nothing you can break that I can't fix. That was just an amazing kind of quote. So that's my top 3 takeaways. Just want to thank AIA for supporting XY Live. And thank you, Ray J, for jumping on the call. And thank you so much, Sharon, for coming and giving us all your great insights.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Ray J.
Thanks very much, guys. All the best.
All right, we'll see you all next week. See you guys.